Year 1957, a young archaeologist named Vishnu Sridhar Wakankar was traveling by train through the Raisan district of Madhya Pradesh, India. Glancing out the window, he spotted some unusual rock formations, strikingly similar to those he had seen in photographs of prehistoric cave sites in Spain and France. He returned to the location the very next week, and as he stepped among the rocks, the scene that unfolded before him altered the timeline of Indian history forever. On the wall of a cave were markings and paintings that spoke not of a modern artist, but of the hands of humans who had lived thousands of years ago. This place was Bhimbetka, and this was more than just a discovery. It was the earliest evidence in India of worship, faith, and the experience of the divine. But the question remains, were these merely paintings, or was this where humans first learned to worship a higher power? And if Bhimbetka is so ancient, that is of more than 10,000 years, how did a temple like Khajuraho, delicate, perfect, and rich in craftsmanship, come into existence? Is there a direct link between the two that spans 10,000 years? Welcome back to the Time Vault Docs channel. Dear viewers, today we are embarking on an exciting journey, one that begins in a dark cave and culminates at one of the world's most beautiful temples. This is the story of the evolution that transformed a stone cave into a sacred temple. A total of over 750 rock shelters have been discovered at Bhimbetka, with more than 500 of them featuring paintings. According to some experts, the oldest of these paintings date back approximately 10,000 years, while certain layers go back even further. These paintings depict not only animals and hunting scenes, but also figures shown dancing or participating in rituals with their arms raised. This indicates that humans had begun to act not merely for the sake of sustenance and survival, but also to appease some unseen power, marking the seed of what would eventually evolve into the concept of the temple. In 2003, UNESCO designated Bhimbetka a World Heritage Site, and since then it has also been referred to as India's oldest art gallery. But the story does not end there. Thousands of years later, as humans learned agriculture and began living in settled villages, the methods of worship also started to change. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro and the fire altars found at Kalibangan, both belonging to the Indus Valley civilization, indicate that rituals had become more organized by then. The concepts of purification through water and sacrifice through fire began to take shape during this period, practices that remain integral to Hindu temples to this day. Yet no structures clearly identifiable as temples were found in the Indus Valley. Worship still took place in open-air settings or on small platforms. Now let us turn to the Vedic period, when the method of worship became even more mathematical. Constructing a yajna altar required precise measurements, involving specific shapes, orientations, and intricate calculations. It may come as a surprise, but experts believe that the geometry of the Vedic Agnichayana ritual is reflected in the design of the temple, that is, Garbhagriha or Sanctum Sanctorum in later times. In other words, the temple structure did not emerge suddenly. Its mathematical principles had been established thousands of years earlier. Yet, even during this era, no permanent structures were built. Worship took place under the open sky, centered around fire and mantras. Then came the moment that changed everything. During the Mauryan era in the 3rd century BCE, a circular structure was built at Bhairath in Rajasthan, one that is now considered India's first structural temple. It was neither a massive nor a grand edifice. It was simply a modest circular platform with a pillar standing at its center. Yet its significance was profound. For the first time, human decided to provide a home for the divine. Worship was no longer confined to the open sky. However, the true revolution occurred during the Gupta period, between the 4th and 6th centuries. It was then that the temple form we recognize today began to emerge, a Garbhagriha, that is Sanctum Sanctorum housing the deity, with a mandapa, that is pillared hall, situated in front of it. Sanchi's temple number 17 is among the world's oldest surviving stone temples, remarkably simple with a flat roof, Yet it was within this very simplicity that the foundational grammar of temple architecture was written. The Dashavatara temple at Deoghar took this a step further, marking the first appearance of the shikhara, the pointed tower, rising above the temple in its nascent form. Experts regard this as the earliest glimpse of the Nagar style. At this point, the story diverges into two paths. In North India, the shikhara of the Nagar style became tall and curvilinear, whereas in South India, the Viman of the Dravidian style began to take on a straight, stepped, pyramid-like form. The Pallava kings pioneered a new technique of temple construction in Mahabalipuram, carving an entire temple out of a single hill. This gave rise to structures like the Shore Temple. The same technology was also employed in the Chalukya caves at Badami. But the most astonishing aspect lies hidden at Ellora. In the 8th century, the Rashtrakut kings decided to build the Kailasa Temple, and this was no ordinary temple. It is a monolithic structure carved from a single entire hill, working from the top down. In other words, stones were not assembled. Instead, the temple was revealed by removing hundreds of thousands of tons of rock from a single massive formation. Just imagine, this was achieved without any modern machinery, using only handheld chisels and hammers. The task was so complex that historians today remain amazed at how it was even planned and monitored, since a single minor error could have ruined the entire project. Now let us arrive at the final and most magnificent stop of this journey, Khajuraho. Between the 10th and 11th centuries, the Chandel kings commissioned the construction of approximately 85 temples in Madhya Pradesh, of which only 25 have survived to this day. Khajuraho represents the pinnacle of the Nagar style of architecture. The sculptures adorning these walls are not merely religious in nature. They depict deities, dancing apsaras, that is, celestial nymphs, scenes from everyday life, and even highly intimate moments. Many wonder why such artwork was created on temple walls. Experts believe it symbolizes the four purusharthas, or goals of human life, namely dharma, that is righteousness, artha, that is prosperity, kama, that is pleasure, and moksha, that is liberation. In essence, the temple was not just a place of worship, but a celebration of life itself. And this is where the connection emerges that brings the entire story full circle. The dancing figures in the Bhimbetka caves and the dancing apsaras carved onto the walls of Khajuraho share a remarkable resemblance. Both reflect a fundamental human need that has remained unchanged for millennia: the desire to connect with a higher power, to experience it, and to express that experience through art. The only difference is that at Bhimbetka, this art was created on rough rock, whereas at Khajuraho, that same sentiment was embodied in finely carved stone. So, the next time you look at a sculpture in Khajuraho, remember that it didn't begin with a king or an architect. It started 10,000 years ago in a dark cave, when a human being first placed his hands on a rock and tried to create something greater than himself. I hope you will shower this video from the Time Vault Docs channel with plenty of likes and shares. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.